For details of our schedule, please visit our website at nhk.jp/rj. Please stay tuned.
We bring you the news from NHK World Radio Japan at 8 p.m. Japan time on Friday, September 1st. I'm Risa Shimizu.
And I'm Hiroko Kitadai.
In our top stories, Japan's Deputy Prime Minister Taro Aso has cancelled his trip to Washington next week due to the growing tension over North Korea.
Japan's largest opposition party has chosen its new leader.
And delegates to a conference on rebuilding Pacific bluefin tuna populations have agreed to a stricter version of a system proposed by Japan. Now the news in detail. Japan's Deputy Prime Minister Taro Aso has cancelled his trip to Washington next week due to the growing tension over North Korea. Aso told reporters on Friday that the security environment is tense due to North Korea and that he should stay in Japan to prepare all possible means to ensure safety. He had planned to meet U.S. Vice President Mike Pence for preliminary talks ahead of a second round of bilateral economic dialogue. The visit was scheduled to start on Monday. Trade and other topics were on the agenda of the unofficial talks. Aso, who is also finance minister, had hoped to lay the groundwork for the next round of dialogue in Washington, possibly in mid-October.
People in Aomori Prefecture, northern Japan, have taken part in a missile launch evacuation drill. About 300 residents, including elementary and junior high school students, took part in the drill in Tsugaru City on Friday, Disaster Prevention Day in Japan. The exercise was based on a scenario involving a launch of a ballistic missile from a foreign country toward Japan. The drill began in the morning with a siren from a wireless public address system. At a junior high school, students practiced evacuating to a gymnasium and crouching to protect their heads on a windowless stage. Residents also practiced taking refuge at the school. The drill was held 3 days after North Korea fired a ballistic missile over Hokkaido near Aomori Prefecture. A prefectural government official said that if people hear an emergency warning siren, they should take refuge in buildings or crouch down where they are to protect themselves.
Japan's largest opposition party has chosen its new leader. Former Foreign Minister Seiji Maehara won the Democratic Party's leadership contest on Friday. Maehara secured 502 points, a majority of the points that come from the party's supporters, local and national lawmakers and candidates expected to run in the next national election. He is running against a former Chief Cabinet Secretary, Yukio Edano, who won 332 points. In his acceptance speech, Maehara vowed to make his party a viable alternative to the ruling Liberal Democratic Party. The party has been struggling to capitalize off of the LDP's recent slide in the polls and is aiming to make a fresh start. It needs to figure out how to cooperate with other opposition parties before the next lower house election that will take place by the end of next year. Maehara is 55 years old. He has previously held cabinet positions when his party's predecessor was in power.
Delegates to a conference on rebuilding Pacific bluefin tuna populations have agreed to a stricter version of a system proposed by Japan. It allows an increase in catch limits if a recovery in stocks is confirmed. The 5-day meeting in the South Korean city of Busan ended on Friday. Participating nations included Japan and the United States. Japan proposed that catch ceilings be raised if chances of achieving the current target exceed a certain level. But the U.S. and other nations insisted that stricter conditions be attached to the proposal. They wanted priority placed on conservation of the fish. As a result, the proposal was adopted with stricter requirements than those floated by Japan. The delegates also agreed to set a new target of rebuilding adult stocks to 130,000 tons by 2034. That's more than 7 times the present level. This is in addition to the previously agreed target of 41,000 tons by 2024. That's more than double the current level. The results of the conference paved the way for Japan to raise its catch limits. But at the same time, the country will have to be under continued pressure to tighten its control on tuna fishing for the time being.
Japan's Emperor Akihito has met British Prime Minister Theresa May in Tokyo. May arrived in Japan on Wednesday for a 3-day visit. The meeting took place at the Imperial Palace on Friday. May referred to one of the Emperor's granddaughters, Princess Kako, who will begin studying at a British university later this month. The Emperor said he hopes Princess Kako will lead a good university life in Britain. On Thursday, British Prime Minister Theresa May held a summit meeting with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. They released a joint declaration pledging to swiftly work to create a new economic partnership between the two nations. In today's edition of Insight, we hear the comments of Osamu Tanaka, chief economist at Daiichi Life Research Institute, on the results of May's visit to Japan.
残念ながら特に日本の産業界からですね、期待していた EU 離脱後の
Japan's business world hoped May would dispel uncertainty over the future of Britain after its exit from the European Union. But regrettably, I have to say she has failed to do that. Britain wants to form free trade pacts with other nations after Brexit. One of its important partners will be Japan. I believe that during her visit, May aimed to ink a promise with Japan to accelerate talks on a bilateral trade deal. Japan is already proceeding with negotiations with the EU on an economic partnership agreement. Britain, in the first place, is a country that carries out free and fair trade. The nation has relatively few fields where it competes with Japan. Rather, their relations are mutually complementary. I think negotiations to conclude an economic partnership agreement between the two nations will be relatively smooth. But, as the Japanese government said, envisioning new economic ties with Britain will be difficult until a future relationship between Britain and the EU becomes clear. In parallel with the summit meeting in Japan, Britain held a third round of Brexit talks with the EU in Brussels. But the British government cannot promise anything specific with Japan, as the Brexit negotiations have made little progress in such areas as customs. Therefore, May could not discuss what she sees as Britain's future after Brexit. Britain is hoping to move the Brexit talks to their second phase as early as mid-October, namely beginning negotiations on a post-Brexit relationship with the EU. However, the two sides will likely remain divided over issues, including Britain's contributions to the EU and the treatment of EU citizens in Britain. May brought many business leaders with her to Japan to strengthen economic ties. Government officials say they want to boost ministerial-level relations. I hope the two nations will create closer communication at the public and private levels to ease concern about post-Brexit Britain.
In today's edition of Insight, we heard the comments of Daiichi Life Research Institute chief economist Osamu Tanaka. You are listening to NHK World Radio Japan in Tokyo. Japan and Thailand are celebrating 130 years of diplomatic ties. The relationship continues to deepen. Over 70,000 Japanese are living in Thailand. Many Japanese companies are also operating in the Southeast Asian country. An event to showcase Japanese food and culture is underway in the Thai capital of Bangkok, drawing crowds of people. More than 300 Japanese municipalities and firms are taking part in the 3rd Japan Expo. Main attractions at a section for Japan's northeastern prefecture of Miyagi are local delicacies such as Sasanishiki brand rice and fish sausages. Miyagi was hit hard by the earthquake and tsunami in March 2011, but thanks to reconstruction efforts, it has been able to resume exports of local specialties. Visitors can try their hand at making rice balls with rice from Miyagi. At the venue, Radio Japan's Thai language team is offering tips on disaster preparedness to coincide with Japan's Disaster Prevention Day, which falls on September 1st every year. The date was set after Tokyo and surrounding areas were devastated by a major earthquake in 1923. Events to raise awareness of disaster preparedness take place on the day. The Radio Japan group wants to spread lessons learned in disaster-prone Japan. They are demonstrating ways to use everyday items to survive disasters, such as making a life jacket using plastic bottles. The expo organizers expect to draw 100,000 visitors during its 3-day run.
New products equipped with the latest technology have been shown to media in Berlin ahead of one of the world's leading consumer electronics shows. About 1,800 firms from around the world are taking part in the annual IFA Berlin, which runs through next Wednesday. The show features many products equipped with Internet of Things or IoT technology as well as artificial intelligence. Dutch manufacturer Philips unveiled a system that uses a smartphone to manage baby formula volume and feeding times. The system also enables users to deal with changes in their baby's temperature by using feeding bottles and thermometers connected to the Internet. Japanese electronics maker Sharp is taking part in the show for the first time in 5 years. It's showcasing home-use 8K television sets, which the firm says will be crucial for expanding its business overseas. The TV's resolution is 16 times that of existing high-definition models. Another Japanese electronics maker, Sony, is introducing a speaker equipped with artificial intelligence. Users can control and hear 360-degree sound simply by speaking to the device. Sony Europe President Shigeru Kumekawa says it's important to impress users as a competition strategy and that he wants to focus completely on product quality.
India has failed to launch a communications satellite on Thursday, raising concerns over its impact on Japan's launch to put rovers on the moon. The same rocket type will be used by the Japanese private sector team Hakuto, which aims to launch a commercial lunar lander in late December. The rocket was launched from the Space Center located in Sriharikota in the southern Indian state of Andhra Pradesh. While the rocket flew 507 kilometers above the Earth for about 90 minutes after launch, the satellite could not be carried into orbit. India is keen to advance its satellite launch business. The nation maintains a high success record of 39 consecutive satellite launches and develops rockets at a considerably lower cost compared to Japan and Western countries. India's Space Research Organization chairman A.S. Kiran Kumar said while this was the first public-private joint launch, its failure will be thoroughly analyzed and future plans will also be reviewed. The failed launch is expected to impact launch plans by the Japanese team.
Office workers in central Tokyo have taken part in a drill to guide foreign tourists to evacuation sites after a major earthquake. About 50 people participated in the drill by real estate developer Mitsubishi Estate in the Marunouchi Business District on Friday. September 1st is Disaster Prevention Day in Japan. Staff at a tourism information center called on the foreign tourists to stay calm, follow instructions, and proceed to the evacuation sites. They used tablet computers with explanations in English, Chinese, and Korean about public transport and restroom locations. A Brazilian woman says she has never experienced a strong earthquake and she learned it was safer to stay indoors. Last year, an estimated 2 million foreign tourists visited the Marunouchi district. A senior official of Mitsubishi Estate says he wants to calmly provide courteous assistance for foreign visitors who may feel scared if they encounter a disaster in an unfamiliar place.
Finally, let's take another look at the top stories this hour. Japan's Deputy Prime Minister Taro Aso has cancelled his trip to Washington next week due to the growing tension over North Korea. And Japan's largest opposition party has chosen its new leader. And that was the news from NHK World Radio Japan in Tokyo. I'm Risa Shimizu.
And I'm Hiroko Kitarai.
You can also access the latest English news on the internet. Log on to our website at nhk.jp/rj.
everyone, I'm Michael Reese.
And I'm Hiroko Kitarai.
It's time now for Bosai, Measures for Saving Your Life. Now this is a program on lessons we can all learn from earthquakes, typhoons and volcanic eruptions in disaster-prone Japan and how to minimize the damage. September 1st is Disaster Prevention Day in Japan, so on this occasion we bring you a Bosai special.
If you want to find out more about disaster preparedness, then be sure to listen to this program right until the end.
Hiroko-san, September 1st is designated Disaster Prevention Day in Japan. Can you tell us why?
Yes, it's because September 1st was the day when a devastating earthquake hit Tokyo and surrounding areas in 1923. It's known as the Great Kanto Earthquake. This is also a season when we're getting many typhoons. Disaster Prevention Day was established to remind people to be aware of the need to prepare for disasters.
That's right. And on this day, many communities, companies and schools are holding disaster drills.
TV and radio stations are also airing disaster-related specials.
Our program, Bosai, has been getting questions from listeners around the world about disaster preparedness. And on this Bosai special, we'll be giving you some answers.
And we have Associate Professor Satoko Oki of Keio University to tackle your queries. She specializes in seismology and disaster preparedness education. You probably know her through our quiz segment.
Okay, so what's the first question?
It's from Iwan Maulana of Indonesia. And his question is, what sort of warning signs do we get before a quake? We received a similar question from a listener in Norway, Sonia Fernandez Guerrero. She writes that people say animals act strangely before a major earthquake, which is supposed to be a warning sign. What sort of signs are well known in Japan?
We'll ask Professor Oki to deal with both questions.
日本では古来からナマズが地震を予知するというふうに言われているんですけれども、今のところ
Since ancient times, Japanese people have said catfish can sense earthquakes before they happen. But we have no case to date showing this to be true. Also in Japan, we have something called earthquake clouds. According to this belief, we're supposed to be able to see a quake coming by observing the shapes of clouds. But these beliefs are completely unreliable. It's better to take concrete action and be prepared rather than betting on the behavior of animals or how clouds are shaped.
So, unfortunately, we don't have a system in place today that can predict earthquakes, and that makes it all the more important to stay prepared. A serious issue concerns the action people need to take when preparing for a possible earthquake. One question from a listener, Wu Shui Guang in Taipei, Taiwan, touches on this area of preparedness. He asks, Taiwan is just like Japan. We get quakes quite often. But unlike typhoons, no one knows when they're going to hit. I'm worried, even when I go to bed. Can you give me some advice? Let's turn to Professor Oki for that advice.
日が昇る前発生した阪神・淡路大震災1995年の兵庫県南部地震の時には
A powerful quake struck the Hanshin-Awaji area in western Japan on January 17th in 1995, right before sunrise. More than 6,400 people died from the quake that lasted only 10 seconds. 88% of the fatalities were people who were crushed or suffocated. In other words, they were buried underneath furniture or houses that came crashing down. Earthquakes have the power to jolt houses and buildings, forcing objects on shelves to fall or the shelves themselves to topple. Or objects on small wheels can shift suddenly and with great force. So it's important to make sure that objects don't fall, collapse, or move. So the least you can do in a quake-prone country is keep furniture and other things in your house securely fixed. And another thing, while in bed, you should keep a flashlight nearby in case of a power outage at night, as well as a whistle to call for help or alert your family. If you're in a country like Japan where you take off your shoes while inside your house, it's a good idea to keep a pair of shoes near your bed. You could get hurt if you walk around barefoot on a floor covered with broken glass.
Well, Mr. Wu, I hope you find those tips useful. Here's the next question about preparedness. It's from Hudma Mendes Maris Ferrior in Brazil, and the question is, Do Japanese people always keep a disaster preparedness kit ready in case of an emergency? If so, I'd like to know more about them. And a listener from Indonesia, Eko Enri Wiono, asks the same question. So here's Professor Oki.
中からいきたいと思います。中は避難するときに必要なものをリュックに入れた防災キットのことです。
First, let's talk about a medium-sized kit. You take one of these when you leave home because your house may be destroyed in a quake or washed away in a tsunami, or a fire might approach. This may not be the best example, but imagine you're living in a tent for 3 days in the wilderness. Everyone needs water, food, and a flashlight in that kind of situation. I have a small child, so I'd put his diapers, clothes, and many towels in my kit. You can decide what to put in yours, depending on the needs of your family. Now about small kits. These are disaster pouches. You carry them around all the time. They're palm-sized bags for carrying any medicine you need, a small flashlight, and a whistle for calling for help. So you'll be better able to deal with a disaster if it strikes while you're on your way to work or school.
Professor Oki also says it's important to keep a stock of water, that's 3 liters of water per day, per person, and have enough for 3 days. If you are always well prepared, it will help you to stay calm in times of disaster. If a quake occurs while children are at school, what should they do? Now that's a question from Mohammed Arshad Quraishi in Pakistan. Let's see what Professor Oki has to say.
ちょっと難しい質問で、ケースバイケースなんですよね。国によっては建物が
That's a bit of a difficult question. It all depends. In some countries, buildings are very fragile and can get destroyed in a strong quake. In that case, it's necessary to get out of the building right away as fast as you can. But in Japan, school buildings are constructed in accordance with earthquake building codes, and they're 1.5 times stronger than regular houses. Since it's safe inside school buildings, the rule in Japan is to stay put while the shaking takes place. Children in Japanese schools are instructed to duck under their desks within 2 seconds of the moment they feel a quake. This is so they won't get hurt if shelves, lighting fixtures, and other objects fall down. I'm not particularly familiar with the structure of school buildings in Pakistan and the materials they're built with, but if a building appears likely to collapse, children should run outside. Buildings reflect the culture and laws of the countries they're in, so I recommend you ask experts in your country.
We also have a question we'd expect from a city dweller. It's from Anand Mohanbain in India, and he asks, what sort of things should we be careful about if we're in a high-rise building and an earthquake strikes? And Mohammed Busari in Indonesia has this question. What should we do when there's an earthquake and we get trapped in an elevator? Here's Professor Oki.
高い建物の高層階にいるときに恐ろしいのは、家具が倒れてくることのほかに火災ですね。有毒なガスが
If you are on an upper floor of a high-rise building, the most frightening thing is fire, apart from falling pieces of furniture. Once your building stops shaking, you should check possible sources of fire right away, switch off the breakers in the electrical box, close the main gas valve, and run outside. Don't use an elevator. That's an absolute no-no. Climb down the stairs. This is because an elevator is structured to move up and down, and it stops when pressure is applied sideways. It may be working at the time, but it could stop with the next aftershock, trapping you inside. So don't use an elevator. Run outside via a staircase. If you happen to be in an elevator when a quake hits, press the buttons for all the floors all at once. Get off quickly on the first floor where it stops.
So, seismologist Oki has answered queries from our listeners. Thank you very much for sending these and your many other questions. Finally, here's a message from Professor Oki to all of you out there listening.
私の友人たちは2011年の3月11日の東日本大震災で家族を失いました。
My friends lost their family members in the major earthquake and tsunami that hit northeastern Japan on March 11th, 2011. Among the 18,000 dead and missing is my friend's daughter. She was good at the piano. Her handwriting was beautiful. She was the youngest child, and a little spoiled. On the morning of March 11th, she left home for school saying, "See you later." She never had a chance to say, "Hi, I'm back home." Disaster Prevention Day is a time when we remember each and every person like her and promise that we'll never let them die in vain, and that we, who are here and now, will do all we can to work for a disaster-free future. All the letters that we've received from many countries and territories show that you listeners are seriously thinking, what would I do in a disaster? And that's a wonderful thing from the perspective of disaster preparedness. I hope you'll keep sending us your opinions, questions, and thoughts about Bosai in the future as well.
This has been a special edition of our series Bosai, Measures for Saving Your Life. Today, we've been reading and answering some of your questions.
So be sure to send us more of your questions about Bosai. From our studios at NHK in Tokyo, I'm Hiroko Kitadai.
And I'm Michael Reese.
You're listening to NHK World Radio Japan, broadcasting from Tokyo. Here's a frequency notice. English language programs are broadcast 5 times a day. At 5 hours UTC on 11.970 and 5.975 megahertz. At 11 hours on 11.695. At 14 hours on 11.705 and 11.935. At 18 hours on 9.755. And at 1930 hours on 9.710 and 9.480. We're always pleased to receive your comments and suggestions via mail or through our website at nhk.jp/rj.